She always came home late. Just work, she'd say, flashing me that tired smile, the one that didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. At first, I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married for 5 years. I knew her. At least I thought I did. But then the signs started stacking up like unpaid bills. The way she'd suddenly silence her phone when I entered the room. The mysterious deposits in our joint account. Never enough to explain the new designer heels in her closet. The way she'd flinch when I touched her shoulder, like my hands carried some kind of guilt she didn't want to catch. I told myself I was paranoid. That love meant trust. But doubt is a slow poison. Then came the night I couldn't take it anymore. She texted me at 8 p.m., "Late meeting, don't wait up." But her location was turned off. And something in the way she said it, the rehearsed casualness, made my stomach twist. So I followed her. Not to some cheap motel, not to another man's apartment, but to the Velvet Room, an exclusive lounge downtown where the valets parked Bentleys and the bouncers knew her by name. Through the tinted windows, I saw her. Hair down, lips red, wrapped in a black dress I'd never seen before. She was leaning in, laughing at some silver-haired man's joke, her fingers lingering on his wrist just a second too long. It wasn't cheating. But it wasn't honesty either, and that's when I realized the worst lies aren't the ones you tell. They're the ones you live. We met in the rain, not in some romantic movie-style downpour, just a miserable Tuesday drizzle that had us both ducking into the same cramped coffee shop. She was ahead of me in line, shaking water from her jacket, and when the barista called out her order, "Large black coffee, no sugar, just like your soul," she laughed, loud and unguarded. I liked her immediately. I made some stupid joke about caffeine being the only reliable love left in the world. She rolled her eyes but slid into the seat across from me anyway. 2 hours later, we were still talking. Her name was Clara. She was sharp in a way that didn't cut, witty, but never cruel. She told me she worked in corporate PR. I make rich people look less terrible, and I believed her because she had that polished ease, the kind of woman who could talk her way into or out of anything. Our first real date was at a dive bar with sticky floors. She won 3 rounds of pool and let me buy her a whiskey she didn't finish. When I walked her home, she stopped under a streetlight and kissed me first. No games, no pretense, just want. Plain and simple. That's how she was back then. Direct in a way that felt like relief. She hated liars, she said. Hated when people hid behind half-truths and omissions. "If you're going to be a bastard, at least own it," she'd say. And I loved that about her. The clarity. The lack of bullshit. 6 months in, she moved into my apartment. A year later, we eloped on a whim during a weekend trip to Vermont. The ceremony took 12 minutes. She wore a $40 dress from a consignment shop and looked happier than I'd ever seen her. Back then, her job was just a thing she did. Long hours sometimes, sure, but nothing unusual. She'd come home buzzing from some high-stakes meeting, still riding the adrenaline, and I'd listen as she unraveled the day's dramas over takeout. "You're my decompression chamber," she'd say, kicking off her heels and stretching her feet into my lap. I never doubted her, not once. That's what makes this so much worse, because the woman I married didn't just vanish overnight. She was erased, piece by piece, by the life she was living when I wasn't looking. I didn't see the transformation happening at first. That's the thing about erosion. You never notice the ground shifting beneath you until the landslide begins. It began with small things. The way she'd stare at her phone with this strange intensity, thumbs flying across the screen, only to lock it the second I entered the room. How she started taking calls outside, even in winter, claiming the reception was better. At first I believed her. Why wouldn't I? This was Clara, my Clara, who used to leave her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter, who'd hand it to me to read texts aloud while she cooked. Then the late nights started. Not the occasional work dinner I was used to, but 3-4 times a week. She'd come home smelling like places I'd never been. Smoky lounges and expensive perfumes that weren't hers. When I asked who she'd been with, her answers were vague. Just clients, she'd say, already turning away to undress, the conversation clearly over. Her appearance changed too. Subtly at first, a new shade of lipstick here, a more expensive haircut there. Then suddenly she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before, designer pieces she claimed were sample sales, but carried price tags that made my stomach drop. The Clara I married wore thrift store finds with pride. This woman's closet looked like a boutique. The money didn't add up. Our joint account, the one we used for rent, groceries, the mundane reality of shared life, was suddenly my responsibility alone. Yet she always had cash, always had money for cabs and cocktails and whatever else her new life required. When I asked about her paycheck, she'd get defensive. "I'm handling it," she'd snap, as if my concern was an insult. The physical distance between us grew like a living thing. She stopped reaching for my hand in the car. Our bed became a no man's land of turnbacks and separate blankets. The few times I tried to initiate intimacy, she'd freeze for just a second, just long enough for me to notice, before forcing herself to respond. I started keeping notes without realizing it. The time her location showed her at a restaurant she swore she'd never been to. The Thursday she came home with her hair smelling like someone else's shampoo. The way she'd started using burner apps on her phone, claiming they were for work security. The final straw came when I bumped into her old coworker at a coffee shop. "How's Clara liking the new job?" he asked casually. My blood ran cold. What new job? His face fell as he realized his mistake. At the consulting firm? She left PR months ago. That's when I understood. The woman I married was gone. In her place was a stranger wearing my wife's face, living a life I wasn't part of. And the most terrifying part? I had no idea how long the switch had happened. The realization that Clara had been lying about her job for months hit me like a physical blow. I stood there in that coffee shop, the paper cup burning my fingers, while her colleagues' words echoed in my skull. She'd quit her job, months ago, and never told me. I walked home in a daze, my mind racing through every late night, every unexplained charge, every secretive phone call. The woman I'd built a life with had been living a parallel existence right under my nose. I needed answers. That night, while Clara slept, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. Her passcode had changed. Another red flag. But I remembered seeing her use her fingerprint to unlock it. My hand shook as I carefully lifted her index finger and pressed it to the sensor. The screen lit up, and suddenly I had access to a world of deception. Her email was the first shock. Dozens of confirmations for reservations at high-end restaurants, luxury hotel bookings, and event hostess gigs. I clicked on one, VIP lounge hostess for Blackstone Group annual dinner, $1,500 for evening. Another for a private yacht party, all from an agency called Elite Ambiance. My stomach churned as I opened her texts. Threads with people named only by initials. MR, 9 p.m. at the usual place. DT, wear the red dress tonight. No last names, no context. Just fragments of a life she'd carefully kept hidden. The photos were worse. Dozens of selfies I'd never seen. Clara in slinky cocktail dresses, laughing with gray-haired men in tailored suits, holding champagne flutes in rooms that looked like they belonged in a magazine. In one, a man's hand rested possessively on the small of her back. I nearly dropped the phone when I found the banking app. Transfers totaling over $28,000 in the last 2 months alone, all deposited from something called EA Holdings. The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. This wasn't just some side hustle. This was a second career, a second life. The next night when she left, claiming another client dinner, I followed her. My hands clenched the steering wheel as her Uber led me to an exclusive members-only club downtown. Through the tinted windows, I watched her greet a group of older men, her practiced smile nothing like the real one I used to know. That's when I made my decision. I pushed through the heavy doors, ready to finally confront the stranger wearing my wife's face. The bouncer's arm blocked me like an iron gate. "Members only, sir?" His eyes flicked over my off-the-rack shirt with undisguised contempt. I watched helplessly as Clara disappeared into the club's velvet depths, her laughter floating back to me like a taunt. For 3 nights I staked out that club, watching the parade of wealth and power come and go. On the 4th evening, I finally got my break. A distracted valet left the service entrance unguarded. I slipped inside, my pulse hammering in my throat. The back hallway smelled of cigar smoke and money. Muffled laughter and clinking glasses led me to a private dining room where crystal chandeliers cast golden light on a scene that stopped me cold. There she was. My Clara, but not my Clara at all. She wore a backless emerald gown that clung to curves I barely recognized. Her hair cascaded in perfect waves, her lips a deep crimson I'd never seen at home. She moved between the tables with practiced grace, leaning in close to whisper in men's ears, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. A silver-haired man slipped something into her hand. A folded bill? A card? His fingers lingering too long against her palm. She didn't pull away, just smiled that polished professional smile and tucked it into her clutch. I watched, frozen, as she worked the room like a seasoned performer. This wasn't the woman who used to eat cold pizza in her pajamas with me. This was someone else entirely, a carefully constructed illusion of sophistication and charm. Then I noticed the other women, all similarly stunning, all moving through the crowd with the same calculated ease. Some carried trays of drinks. Others sat at tables, their heads tilted in perfect attention as wealthy men held court. The realization hit me like a punch. She wasn't just attending these events, she was part of the entertainment. A server nearly collided with me, his tray of empty glasses clinking. Clara's head snapped up. Our eyes met across the crowded room. Her perfect mask slipped for just an instant. Shock, then fear flashing across her face, before the polished smile slammed back into place. She excused herself from the table and moved toward me with terrifying composure. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured through clenched teeth, her hand closing like a vice around my arm. The scent of her perfume, something expensive and unfamiliar, made my stomach turn. "What is this, Clara?" I managed to choke out. Her eyes darted to the watching crowd. "Not here." She steered me toward an alcove, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's not what you think." But as I looked at this stranger in my wife's skin, I realized with sickening clarity, I didn't know what to think anymore. The woman I loved had become a mystery wrapped in emerald silk and lies. The car ride home was suffocating. Clara sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her clutch gripped tight in her lap, the emerald dress suddenly looking garish under the streetlights. The silence between us was thick enough to choke on. When the front door closed behind us, she finally spoke. "It's just a job, Daniel." "Just a job?" My voice cracked. "You quit your career. You've been lying for months. You let me believe—" "I didn't lie," she cut in, chin lifting. "I just didn't tell you everything." The semantic dance made me dizzy. I grabbed her clutch before she could stop me, spilling its contents across our kitchen table. Lipstick, mints, and a stack of crisp hundreds. At least $2,000 in cash. Her face flushed. "That's my money. I earned it." "Doing what?" I demanded. "Smiling at rich men? Letting them touch you?" Her eyes flashed. "I'm a hostess. I make conversation. I ensure events run smoothly. That's all." "Then why hide it?" She hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Because I knew you'd react like this. Judgmental. Possessive." The accusation stung. This wasn't about control. This was about the way she'd looked at those men, like they were fascinating, like I hadn't seen that look in her eyes in months. "You flirt with them," I said quietly. Her shoulders slumped. "It's part of the job. Nothing happens." "But something could," I pressed. "That's why they pay you, isn't it?" "The fantasy?" Clara turned away, arms crossed. "You don't understand." "That's the problem," I said, voice breaking. "I don't recognize you anymore." For a moment she wavered, then her phone buzzed. Some client, no doubt, and just like that the wall came back up. She scooped up her things, her heels clicking toward our bedroom. "We'll talk tomorrow," she said, like she was dismissing a difficult guest. I stood there in the wreckage of our marriage, realizing the cruelest truth. The woman I loved hadn't cheated. She just found something she wanted more than us. The days after the confrontation passed in a numb haze. Clara moved through our apartment like a ghost, dressing for events I wasn't supposed to know about, returning with her makeup slightly smudged and her perfume masking other scents. We stopped sharing meals, stopped sharing a bed. I found her agency's website one sleepless night. Elite ambiance hostesses featured photos of beautiful women in black dresses holding champagne flutes. The description made my stomach turn, discretion guaranteed. Our companions provide intellectual stimulation and refined company for exclusive gatherings. The price list appeared in a pop-up window. $500 per hour. $3,000 for evening events. Additional services negotiable. My hands shook as I clicked through gallery images. And there she was, my wife, cropped out of context but unmistakable, laughing beside a gray-haired man at a yacht party. When I confronted her with the screenshot, she didn't deny it, just looked at me with tired eyes. "It's just conversation, Daniel. You're making it dirty. But you're letting them think, that's their problem," she snapped. Then softer. "I'm good at this. I'm finally valued. Can't you understand that?" The crack in her voice undid me, because suddenly I saw it. The late nights weren't just about money. They were about power, about being someone important instead of just my wife. We stopped fighting after that. What was left to say? The distance between us grew until one morning I woke to find her suitcase by the door. "I'm staying with Rachel for a while," she said, not meeting my eyes. The Rachel I'd never met from her new life. As she walked out, I noticed the way her shoulders straightened when she stepped into the hallway, like she was putting on armor. The transformation was complete. I sat alone in our silent apartment, staring at the ring on my finger, wondering when exactly I'd lost her. Maybe not to another man, but to another version of herself I couldn't compete with. The divorce papers came 6 months later. By then, the apartment felt like a museum to a life that no longer existed. Our photos still on the walls, her favorite coffee mug collecting dust in the cabinet. I thought I'd be angrier, but mostly I just felt hollow. People ask me what happened. "Did she cheat?" They whisper, hungry for scandal. I never know how to answer. There was no affair, at least not in the traditional sense. No secret lover, no hotel receipts, no damning texts. Just a slow, quiet replacement of the woman I married with someone I didn't recognize. Maybe that's worse. Because how do you grieve a person who's still alive? How do you mourn a marriage that didn't end with betrayal, but with transformation? I saw her once, months after she left, across a crowded restaurant, wrapped in a fur coat that wasn't hers, laughing with a table of men in suits. She didn't see me, or maybe she chose not to. That's when I understood the real truth. She didn't leave me for someone else. She left me for herself. For the version of Clara who wanted more than our ordinary love could give, for the life that glittered brighter than our shared history. And maybe that's the most painful kind of goodbye. Not the explosive, dramatic end, but the slow fade into strangers. Now, when I think of her, I don't picture the woman in the emerald dress. I remember the Clara who laughed at bad jokes in dive bars, who kissed me in the rain, who used to fall asleep with her head on my chest. The Clara's gone, and I'm still learning how to let her go.